Hi, dear friends. Good morning. Welcome back to Akshadhar. I am Devraj. I hope you guys are learning English very well and also earning great. So that today is 5th September 2023. Before going to start today's session, I would request you guys to please subscribe the channel, like and comment. If you like the video, please share it with your friends so I can bring very informative videos in the future days, upcoming days. So let's start reading the newspaper, you guys. Let's start reading the newspaper, guys. The front page: I never spoke against Hindus, Udaya Nidhi. Manipur camps of misery. Vikram lander put into sleep mode. One nation, one election, a blow to federalism. More militates against multi-tiered governance. India joins Pakistan in the super force, ready to assess capacity of 13 ill states. Government tells SSC. Chinese president will not attend the Delhi G20 summit. Carry out safety audit of buildings. Foreign Ministry declines to give reasons for this absence, says Premier Li Jiang will attend the meet. Beijing hopes that the grouping will rise up to challenges facing global economy development. Looking forward to might reap to India, says Biden. Average commute time for telecommuter is a minimum 1 hour. Article 370 case, SC asks petitioner MP to file affidavit pledging allegiance to Constitution. Metro Mitra up to be launched tomorrow. 50% of spending bills for BBMP works to be released. Poor rainfall leading to summer like a peak demand for electricity, says Minister George. Average commute time of car users for telecom 10 kilometers is minimum 1 hour. Personal to public campaign launched by NGOs prepared a report aiming to reduce the use of personal vehicles and encourage office goers to switch to metro rail at least twice a week. Mobility report recommends cycle lanes and encouraging the use of public transport. BMTCC set to abolish night fare in buses, says Transport Minister. Rainbow Drive layout as residents oppose diversion of Raja Kalvi. HC accepts BBMP's action plan to remove encroachment on lakes and drains. ITS student stabbed by classmate over row. 32-year-old businessman kidnapped by friends for ransom. Energy Department has framed contingency plan to tackle any future power shortfall, says George. While the current share of the renewable energy in the state in power generation is around 40%, the government has plans to increase it to 80%. Solar capacity is also likely to be increased. Underground substations among plans for safe power infrastructure. Bidadi plant will be commissioned in 3 months. No cut-off date. Eligible consumers can still apply for Grahajyoti. Doctoral program in management. With varied levels in each classroom post pandemic, teachers need new skills to reach all. While it has been estimated that learning outcomes have dropped by 50% even in elite private schools, government schools have seen about 4 different groups of different students in every classroom that have been categorized based on learning abilities. Police crack burglary case, recover valuable worth 1.5 crore. BBMP chief engineer directs officials to carry out safety and structural audit of buildings. This assumes significance after a fire accident at the quality control and laboratory office in the BBMP head office last month. Gaurikin unhappy with slow phase-up trial. Activists propose a special fast track court. 62 taluks in state qualified to be declared dot hit as per center's parameters. Between June 1st and September 4th, as against the normal rainfall of 711 mm, the state received 526 mm, resulting in a deficit of 26%. Center urged to make drought declaration process flexible. Meetings sought to hasten Upper Bhadra project. Nagamohan Das seeks clarity from state government on probe into 40% commission charge. Officials are directed to spend 54,371 crore allocated as capital expenditure by February. State were housed in order to finish probe within a time frame, Lokayukt police told. Armed gang attacks DMK functionary at a hotel in Bangalore. According to the Banaswadi police, the gang followed him in a car and attacked him before fleeing from the spot. Akashwani to launch story A Curve for Children. Car scrap dealers worried about new registered vehicle scrapping facility in Bangalore. RVSFs of the big automobile companies are expected to change the profile of the vehicle scrapping business by bringing in a professional touch to the process. How to dispose of your end of life car at a registered vehicle scrapping facility. How to dispose of your end of life car at a registered vehicle scrapping facility. My songs come from a place of both darkness and hope. Vocalist Shilpa Anant, who is releasing her next album later this month, talks about her musical journey, monologues, and more. A wider spectrum. The importance of being a well read, helping teachers broach sexual health lessons. Wouldn't be intimidated by evil poses. Udhayanidhi Stalin, speaking at the Thuthukudi DMK leader, insists he had not spoken against Hinduism or Hindus. Says he condemns the evil practices and inequality encouraged by Sanatana Dharma. LUC tigers captured from human settlement in Kerala. Notify election of D. Kerala has Gadwal MLA sees EC order. VSSC exam fraud. Police gather evidence against established racket. All eyes on Patupalli as its voter take their pick today. For the first time after pandemic triggered slump, Kerala movie halls have a cheerful Onam. The revival in the fortunes of theatre owners comes after four bleak Onam race seasons, with the theatres in Kerala remaining closed for two of those due to the pandemic. RMP leader's murder, HC starts hearing appeal of 12 convicts. Only 12% of Bengaluru's population above 50 years have received any adult vaccines, finds survey. A distraction balloon in the winds of federalism. Let's read this editorial page. The One Nation, One Election proposal mooted yet again by the Narendra Modi government is deeply flawed. The reason for the proposal are fallacious. The idea is unimplementable. It is nothing but a distraction balloon floated to a tide over the negative headlines about the Prime Minister's cryonism and the Chinese President Xi Jinping snubbed to the G20 summit. The government argues that India is in a permanent campaign, to borrow the words of the American political commentator Sidney Blumenthal. India has had either a state or a national election every year for the last 36 years. This devours enormous financial resources and efforts, and the time of the government and political parties see this is the seeming concern. An election held constantly in some part of the country with a model code of conduct distracts from governance and leads to policy paralysis. This is the essence of the opening argument in the notification issued a few days ago to constitute a panel to study a one nation, one election. Do not conflate these two. Except India does not have an election every year, one of India's states does. There is a fundamental difference between the two. When there is an election in, say, Bengal, with the Trinamool Congress, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and the left contesting, a Tamil Nadu governed by the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam or the All India Anna Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam is not impacted. An election in Assam with a model code of conduct does not stop road projects or development in Gujarat. So when there are elections in a few states, India is not in an election mood. Some of India's states are all of India's major political parties are not in an election mode. Only some are. It is important to not conflate the two, since this notion is the basis for all arguments used to propagate the one election idea. The national parties with a Delhi based high command culture, such as the Congress and the BJP, are the ones that may feel the pressure of constant elections because municipal or state elections held in any part of the country involve their national leadership, especially when the campaigners in chief of the BJP for a local body to a state election held anywhere in the country also happen to have the importance jobs of prime minister and home minister. It can feel like they are being stretched in a permanent campaign and sidetracked from governance. But if the BJP chooses or wants to fight all election in the country with the prime minister as their campaigner in chief and the home minister as their sole election in charge, it is their flaw and not the nation's problem. It is certainly not a virtue of a prime minister to be so frequently relegating the duties of his office, meant to serve all citizens, to a lower priority such as the electoral interest of his party. Each of India's states have different political cultures and parties. Why should the basic constitutional structure of the country be changed for two national leaders to help balance their campaign and governance schedules? Under the alibi are perennial elections. The one election idea is only for the convenience of the BJP's campaign and smacks up arrogance and ignorance of India's political diversity. Furthermore, India is an attack on and an affront to India's federalism. Today, an elected chief minister of a state has the powers to recommend the dissolution of their state legislatures and call for early elections, as Telangana Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao did in 2018, breaking the cycle of simultaneous state and parliamentary elections in the state. Under a one election framework, KCR will not have the right to do this. Why should these powers be taken away from the states and only the union government have the powers to dictate the election schedule for every state? This is yet another blow to India's federalism. Misleading arguments. Yet another misleading argument put forth in support of the idea is that between 1951 to 52 and 1967, India had simultaneous elections, and hence it is appropriate to revert to that system. That was not by design but by happenstance. Since all states started off the block at the same time and had stable tenures in the first 2 decades after independence, It is a testament to India's plurality and the need for diverse political representation, and that a plethora of regional parties mushroomed over the last 6 decades to govern various states as per their own election schedules, as the state's politics warranted. It is foolhardy and regressive to possible resynchronize the election schedules of various states by design. Cost savings is the one other reason cited for a concurrent elections proposal, something that even acknowledgeable political commentators fall for, but one that is deceptive. Various estimates by the Election Commission, Niti Aayog, and the government show that the cost of conducting all state and parliamentary elections in a few 5 year cycle work out to the equivalent of 10 per voter per week, rupee 10 per voter per year. The Niti Aayog report has also said that when elections are synchronized, it will cost the equivalent of rupees 5 per voter per year. If any, in the short term, simultaneous elections will increase the costs for deploying far larger numbers of electronic voting machines and control units. So it is laughable to imply that India's federalism needs to be subverted, political diversity thwarted, and the constitutional structure amended to say rupee 5 for every voter in a year. The government could have saved that amount just by not building the grand central vista in Delhi. Political parties and candidates may spend a lot more money on elections than the government, but that is not the taxpayers' money. On the contrary, there is economic research to suggest that such election spending by parties and candidates actually benefits the economy and the government's tax revenues by boosting private consumption and serving as a stimulus. The government's logic is incompatible with the vagaries of a parliamentary system in a large and a diverse democracy. A single election calendar may work in a presidential system where the survival of the executive is not dependent upon a legislative majority. In India's parliamentary democracy, this is ipso facto a non-starter, and one should not be wasting the nation's time deliberating on this. Unitarism in the form of efficiency. One nation, one election is a politically unfeasible, administratively unworkable, and unconstitutionally unviable proposition. The idea is premised on flimsy and shallow grounds of cost savings, policy paralysis, and governance interference. It is nothing but a deliberate ploy of the Narendra Modi government to move the headlines away from cryonism, cronism, and China. That is to choose that it it choose to use one nation one election to deflect attention is a reflection of its dismal lack of belief in India's federal democratic parliamentary structure. The real implicit message underlying the Modi government's one election distraction is the clear ideological divide in Indian politics today. The BJP's India is a uniform nation and polity versus the India's alliance. India is a union of diverse states and polities. Those of us who believe in the real India will never seek to shoehorn it into a deranged fantasy of unitarism dressed up as efficiency. This is about the emerging countries need women-led climate action. Let's read this. Gender equality and environmental goals are mutually reinforcing and create a virtuous cycle that will help accelerate the achievement of the SDGs Sustainable Development Goals, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development 2021. The impact of climate change is one that has profound consequences for humans and has emerged as one of the biggest global challenges in recent decades. The effects of climate change vary according to location, socioeconomic status, and gender. An International Labour Organization study said that in 2030, 2.2% of total working hours worldwide will be lost to high temperatures. A productivity loss equivalent to 30 million full time jobs. The United Nations highlighted that across genders, women are considered to be highly vulnerable and disproportionately affected by climate change than men to the impact of climate change felt more in low income countries. In addition, women across the world face severe risks to their health, safety, and quality of life. However, women in developing and less developed countries, especially in low income areas, are more vulnerable to climate change because of their dependence on natural resources and labor intensive work for their livelihood. Women are more likely to live in poverty than men, which is just one of several social, economic, and cultural variables that makes them more susceptible to the effects of climate change. Women from low income households are more at risk because they are more responsible for food, water, and other homely unpaid work. Due to the climate crisis, more time and effort are needed to obtain basic necessities. Rural women often shoulder the burden of ensuring access to clean water, adequate cooking fuel, and nutritious food for their families. Women may be at increased risk for health and safety because they must travel long distances every day to collect water and fuel. This is why climate change has a disproportionate effect on rural women. Women in low income countries, predominantly South Asia and Sub Saharan Africa, engage in climate vulnerable occupations such as farming and other labor intensive work. According to the ILO, the 60% of working women in Southern Asia and Sub Saharan Africa are still in agriculture, where they are often underpaid and overworked, despite being the backbone of the food production system. Women own only about 10% of the land used for farming. MC Alisto 2023 study has highlighted how there could be 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2050. Gender specific issues. According to a UN study, most 80% of these displaced by climate related disasters are women and girls. Women, especially those from vulnerable communities, face particular difficulties during and after natural disasters. When women are uprooted, they are more susceptible to prejudice and exploitation. For instance, after the earthquake in Nepal in 2015, the United Nations Population Fund found women were more exposed to trafficking and exploitation, separation from social networks, a higher risk of gender based violence, and the decreased access to employment, education, and essential health services such as sexual and reproductive health care and psychosocial support are just some gender specific issues women face. Women make up a disproportionately large portion of the agricultural workforce in emerging countries. Climate change impacts agricultural productivity negatively and significantly. Heat stress affects workers a lot in this sector, especially in South Asia and Africa. Changing participation patterns and more frequent extreme weather events are just the beginning of the problems. Their effects on crop production and food security fall disproportionately on these people who already face significant challenges in the obtaining resources, expertise and technology. Women are engaged in agriculture do not have access to quality inputs and possess a low education and technical knowledge. Thus, women farmers and laborers are vulnerable and are seriously impacted. Various studies also reflect how flooding has increased water scarcity and also violence against and the exploitation of women. Investing in women's education training. Climate change impacts can particularly exacerbate poverty and socioeconomic vulnerabilities among women. Climate change is also linked to women's inequality. According to estimates, 130 million people could be pushed into poverty by 2050 due to climate change risks, natural disasters, and food inflation, impacting women's inequality. When it comes to adjusting to a changing climate, when women have a lot to offer, investments in women's education, training, and access to resources are essential if we are to be resilient to the impact of climate change. Reduce the negative impacts of climate change on people's living standards by teaching them how to practice sustainable agriculture, water management, and energy generation. For example, in India, the Self-Employed Women's Association teaches women farmers how to respond to shifting climate patterns to support themselves better financially. Therefore, it is essential to support groups that educate the public, train people to adapt to climate change, and invest in women's education and training in environmentally friendly farming methods. Women's participation in climate policy decision making at all levels is crucial for effective climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies, as well as getting decent employment. As women face a greater risks in climate change, gender parity in decision making bodies is essential. One such program in South Asia is the Gender and Climate Change Development Program, which aims to increase women's influence in policy making by providing them with a stronger voice. Globally, similar efforts are required for efficient climate change adaptation and mitigation. We can say that developing and emerging countries urgently need women led climate action. This is about the climate action. Let's go to the next page. Tires about one nation, one election militates against federalism. Tired government. Opposition movement. Despite minor deceleration, GST inflows create room to expedite tax rates. Living in the age of moral Living in the age of moral dystopia, a sandstorm is brewing in Andhra. Failure to act on illegal and sand mining could spell trouble for the YSRCP's image. 25% PMUY customers took no cylinder refill or just one last year. Half 9.58 crore PMUY's households, 1.18 crore brought no refills in. Twenty 22 through 23, another 1.5 crore bought for one refill. Chinese president will not attend the G20 summit. Navy brings out a maritime infrastructure roadmap. IAF begins Western Air Command's annual exercise. The operations from September 4 to 14 will see activation of all frontline assets and force multipliers of the air force from the LOC to the LAC. Macron to raise the risk of partitioning of the world at a G20 meet. CJ asks petitioners if Article 370 is above basic structure and amending powers of Parliament. Ready to assist capacity of 13 ill states. Government. Cabinet crew member murdered in Mumbai. Doctors team visits relief camps in Manipur, flags poor living conditions. Manipur police files file case against EGI for promoting enmity. BJP targets India leaders over Tamil Nadu ministers' remarks. Rajnath says DMK has attacked Sanatana Dharma and Congress is quite on it. Dharmendra Pradhan says leaders of the oppositional alliance seem to be competing with each other to abuse Indian civilization, its core belief and Hindu Dharma. Complaint filed against Udhayanidhi in Bihar court. Fadnavis apologizes for use of force by police and protesters. Uma Bharti mipped after no invitation to BJP event. Talk of early election means the BJP is panicking Congress. Pay equal respect to all religions, says Congress. BJP asks its supporters to choose Nothan Gosi by poll. Vikram Lander does a ho hop, goes to sleep. Good night till September 22. ISRO hopes to wake up a lander and rover when lunar day dawns again. Kram elevated itself by about 40 cm and landed 30 cm to 40 cm away. The Hope experiment has significant bearing on future missions to bring back samples, human plight. ASA survey technique is against a court's decision. UP lawyers start a 3-day strike over baton charge. Where West Bengal governor indulging in dictatorial practices, minister. Telecom firms, civil society groups are divided over selective ban on apps. After COVID-19, Russia rolls out the red carpet for Indian tourists against Krishna da Purushottama. Kalsakava, 1 UTO, pro-Western PM replaced in parliament vote. UN nuclear agency regrets a lack of cooperation from Iran Mauritius. Bomb attack on Myanmar border hub kills 5 officials and injures 11. Israel, Bahrain, foreign ministers agree to boost trade relationship. Ukraine posts climb against in the south and near Bakhmut. No deal until West meets Moscow's demands. Putin. Looking forward to India trip. Disappointed Xi is not attending G20 meet. Biden. Russian presidents met Turkey's Erdogan, who wanted to revive the agreement on grain export that was cancelled in July. Putin says he will not honor the deal within days if his demands are met. France evacuates 5 Afghan men who faced Taliban threats. Gabon's coup leader moots amnesty for dissenters. Free polls. Attacks on Christians in Pakistan set up by bid to falsely implicate them for blasphemy police. UAE creates federal authority to monitor commercial gaming. CBDCs can make payments across borders efficient. Thus, faster and cheaper cross-border payment services would deliver widespread benefits to people. The ABIA governor noted insufficient transparency in such payments remains a challenge. State Bank of India allows CBDC users to link to UPI. Skoda unveils variants of SUV Kushaq sedan Slava. SpiceJet gives lesser stock to clear 28 million. New norms can raise CV prices by 20%, 12%. Sundaram home pin to tap budget houses. India may add 7 lakh gig jobs by November. Team leads. Swaraj unveils new range of tractors in 40 to 50 HP category. Morgan Stanley buys cancer care provider Clear Medi for 280 crore. As stocks hit a low, home prices surge in double digits. Apollo Hospitals unveils enhanced connected care. India breaches past Nepal in rain hit match, joins Pakistan in Super Pose. Bimra misses a match against Nepal to welcome baby boy. Maxwell likely to skip ODI series against the man in blue. Letan Das declared fit, adapted into Bangladesh Asia Cup squad. And Jude Williamson to be named in New Zealand's W World Cup squad. India's WC squad to be announced today. Ostapenko ends the squad, takes a new run and number 1 Reen Djokovic cruises. One played impulsively in some positions against Carlsen. Lewandowski penalty wins it for Barcelona in the end. The match also saw the debuts of Cancelo and Felix as second half substitutes. The Portugal stars joined the Catalan club on loan deals just before the close of the summer transfer window. Indian men's team enters semi-finals in Asian TT. Messi has to take Miami to big win over LAFC. It all started in the city of Joy for Prague. Jew has the last laugh in the Blitz section. Indian boxing team for Asian Games to train in China. Rome Ramos returns to boyhood club Sevilla after 18 years. Rahul included but no place for Taha. Lucknow to host Davis Cup World Group 2 tie. Akido climbs honors in the Belmont Friends Plate. Verstappen's record is part of something even more impressive. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur lauds the runway leader's consistent ability over the last two seasons to override any mistakes with his brilliant driving. Ferrari's Sainz and Leclerc bring the fighting spirit back at Monza. And notification State Bank of India notification minority welfare department. It for tennis mothers storm the code, shatter stereotypes. So Wajiniaki is the most recent to return to a career in sports after giving birth and has become the face of mothers, leading a profession while being a full-time parent. Serena famously won the 2017 Australian Open while pregnant. Court paved the way back in the 1970s. Golf over pose and with the weight of expectations on your soldiers. I wanted to see with these three events that I came back and I played this year. I wanted to see kind of where I was tennis wise, where I was physically. A radical idea to settle the universe expansion dispute. Scientists from the ICTS Bangalore have proposed a new way to measure the Hubble constant, which could help resolve a crisis in cosmology about how fast the universe is accelerating using lensed gravitational waves observed by the next generation of LIGO observatories. Study spots the bottleneck in human evolution. American astronomer Edwin Hubble provided the first mathematical description of the universe expansion in an equation called Hubble's law. The precise rate of this expansion, called the Hubble constant, remains a point of crisis in modern cosmology. The downturn in the human ancestral population size was likely caused by glaciation events, droughts, and loss of other species, potentially those that were a food source. What confused computers need to compute logic gates. Text and context last two page guys. A number of sheets files that gave to lessors in order to clear dues. The assets declared by national parties in 21 to 22. The rise in India's power consumption in the month of August, 16 in percentage. Market capitalization of BSE listed firms at in an all-time high. The increase in Turkey's annual inflation last month. Aditya L1 it's a functioning and purpose. Aditya L1 will function as a space weather station. Understanding space weather is an international issue, and the data from the spacecraft will aid in making models and predicting storms in advance. The ISRO launches Solar mission Aditya L1 from the Satish Dhawan Space Centers in Sriharikota on September 2. This last page, understanding lays it the French principle of secularism. It involves the complete removal of religious values from the public sphere and their replacement with secular values such as liberty, equality, and fraternity. The underlying goal of laicity is to implement tolerance and to implant tolerance and assimilate people. As powerful typhoons and hurricanes loom over shorelines around the world, let's take a look at the scales used to measure their strength. This is about the today news, guys. So at least read the newspaper at least for 2 hours to make you better in English communication. So I hope you guys enjoy the newspaper reading. So please subscribe the channel, like and comment for more videos related to healthcare, education, and personal interviews. See you in the upcoming videos, guys. Have a great day. Bye bye. Take care.